Okay. Now we're getting to the heart of the matter. We're getting to that peak of Greek classical culture, and we're going to be honing right in on the Athenians. This is kind of the part of history that I live for. I love it. In all the different ways in which we see this kind of cultural efflorescence bringing us to the height of Athenian achievement. It's the height of irony that it's also its own undoing. Because when we get to 5th century Athens, we're getting to the rise and fall of democracy. That's basically about a century. It's like a white hot nugget of awareness, of a polis coming together, of possibilities, accidental reactions to unforeseen consequences. It's a fantastic story. It's almost as if you couldn't have written a more literary approach to the struggle of humanity. So this week, I'm sad to say it's also the end of our time with the Greeks. I love them, and I'm going to be sad to see them go, and I hope that maybe you'll feel a little bit of that loss too. But this part of the class it's why we study history in a certain sense, because we get to the heart of the matter, and here it's getting to the heart of democracy by the people who made it. And when we think about how and why democracy, when it was working at its best for the Athenians, it was a beautiful thing. And it was all about community, community, community. This is true even of the religion. This is where I disagree a bit with your textbook. The Greek religious experience was communal. Whether we talk about hymns of praise, that we talk about ritual performance, public performances, we talk about sacrifice. And the sacrifices in Athens, the blood was for the dead. And then when you burn the sacrifice, the smells were for the gods. But the meat were for the poor. The meat was the communal sharing of the way in which that a culture came together to feed itself. And that's one of the things that your textbook gets right this week. Meat was hard to come by, especially for the poor. So communally, this culture, democracy, when it's firing on all cylinders, is very aware of that kind of communal sensibility. It's all about, I guess, the upbuilding of the polis, and the upbuilding of the citizen, to steal a phrase from Ralph Waldo Emerson, our great American, really poet of a cultural ethos. That upbuilding, that idea that we can kind of raise everybody up together, that's a vital part of the power of democracy. And it seems like we're getting to a phase in our own American history where democracy is failing. At the same time, we maybe are losing sight of the fact that democracy, when it works best, is when it works towards the upbuilding of the community. So this is an important part of this Greek experience to think about. It's got a lot of resonance in terms of how we think about ourselves, I think, right now. And one thing that's important to realize is that the democracy of Athens, it really got stretched too thin. And it's right when Athens became an empire, where its concerns were stretched all over the globe, and it lost sight of the heart of what that Athenian identity was all about, which is all about the ecos. It's the Greek word for the home. And ekougenia, it's the Greek word for the family. And it's when Athens pushed too many of its concerns abroad into this understanding of pursuit of wealth and glory for empire rather than the upbuilding of the ecos or the ekougenia, that democracy became stretched too thin. And we might, when you think about it, when you think about the global stretch of American interests, you might think that our democracy is being stretched a bit too thin right now too. And when we get into this movement into Athenian Empire, the ethos of the culture changes. It moves from a kind of corporate ethos to an individual ethos, and we see the rise of hugely wealthy individuals, of demagogues, whose larger-than-life personalities wield power that is completely unhealthy for the well-functioning of a democracy. And if you think about that, you think about our politics right now, we've got our own self-serving demagogues. In 5th century Athens, first it's Pericles, but then we're going to focus on Alcibiades, who's going to take hubris and self-serving and pleasure-seeking to a different level. And that's a very scary place for your democracy to be. And if you think about where our democracy is, in our own self-serving, pleasure-seeking, hubristic politics, it makes you think that this history, at this time, in this place, is something that warrants a lot of our attention. We're going to really concentrate on 415 and afterwards. And we're going to be reading 2 works that are going to be coming from this really about 12-year period in Athenian history. We're going to read Lysistrata, and we're also going to read the trial and death of Socrates. And Aristophanes writes Lysistrata, and Plato is going to write the death the trial and death of Socrates, but they've got a lot in common with the unraveling of the logic of that Athenian ethos and that Athenian democracy as well. It's an awesome part of the class. And these are 2 amazing readings to get into. 1415 is really the fulcrum that all this history turns on. And it's where Alcibiades, the demagogue, convinces the Athenians to invade Sicily. So talk about having your geography stretched too thin. Athens is here, and Alcibiades convinces the Athenians to take their navy and set out for Sicily for conquest and wealth, and to put pressure on the Spartans. But one would think that, given what we know about Alcibiades, that there was a hubristic sensibility and a self-seeking courting of wealth and power. So 415, he convinces the Athenians to have to Sicily, and at the same time, before Alcibiades can direct that campaign, the Athenians turn on him, and they recognize him basically for what he was. And Alcibiades defects to the Spartans. You know, the Peloponnesian Wars is coming together with this conflict between the Athenians, right, mainland Greece, and then the Spartans from the Peloponnesus, and it's been building since the Persian Wars. In this Peloponnesian War, it's like this slow moving struggle, this drain on both of these poleis until we get to 415. 413, we've got the complete annihilation of the Athenians at Syracuse. It's 413. 411 is when Aristophanes is going to write Lysistrata. And it's this amazing, awakening of the Athenians, and a movement from the plays that really were structured on tragedy, which was what a culture, when it is realizing its zenith, will look towards. But in 413, when Athens had hit its trough, it's going to look towards comedy and Aristophanes to deliver itself. It's sexy, it's bawdy, it's crude, it's drunken, and it is a reaction to democracy that has hit rock bottom. And this story is going to follow its way through, and it's going to wind up in 399 with the trial and death of Socrates. Alcibiades is going to make a comeback in 410. It's crazy. It's like they can't get rid of the guy. They love him and they hate him. 410, he's going to come back and he's going to win an amazing victory right here in the Hellespont at Cyzicus. But not too far after that, the Spartans, with the help of the Persians of all people, they're going to build a massive navy. And then Lysander, in almost the same spot in the Hellespont, is going to win a crushing victory over the Athenians with that massive navy built with the support of the Persians. And then by 404, Lysander is sitting in Piraeus, sitting in the port of Athens itself, and game over at that point. And we had the rise of the 30 tyrants, brutal time of Athens, where they start purging itself of trying to find out who to blame, who's going to be the scapegoat. And we find a resolution to that, and the democracy of Athens reemerges after 403, but it never recovers. And the target, the new scapegoat, is going to be Socrates. And we're going to read Plato's Trial and Death of Socrates. It's beautiful. And then we're going to watch the most amazing film adaptation. It's in Italian. It's going to be slow moving at first. You're going to be like, why would this guy torture us with this film? But when we get into the heart of this cinematic feast. So for me, this is why we do this. This is why I fell in love with Greek history. You're going to read an amazing play. You're going to read an amazing narrative of the trial and death of perhaps the greatest philosopher from the Greek experience, written by his pupil, Plato. And it's got love and compassion, but it's written with a sense of distance and reverence that almost makes you feel like you're listening to a eulogy in the live space of that courtroom. So I hope you enjoyed this week's material. I hope this video helped draw you in to some of the power that operates behind this historical moment. All right, enjoy.